Junta and I were spending some time on this. I think, we talk a lot about efficiencies, and there are so many obvious ways for our customers that we can add value in terms of how they can just be more efficient in how they use data. But for me, it's much deeper than that. For me, a lot of times when I spend time with customers, they're thinking about how to scale AI. And there's a lot of ways that we can think about that from a platform perspective, and Junta can speak at length to that. But for me, it's also about trusted data. And actually, scaling AI is also about scaling trusted data. And for our partnership, LSEG really represents that trusted data. And what do you get as a result? Well, when you actually have that beautiful union between a scalable platform and that trusted data, what you start to see is not just those efficiencies, but actually also a lot of ideation.
So LSEG has one of the most important, valuable data sets in the financial service world, and Databricks is a leading data and AI platform. And you combine those two things together, there's n number of use cases that you could do. That's what gets me really excited about the partnership, because when you look at the financial service landscape today, there's a lot of investment happening in data and AI, but not many customers are getting the true value out of that. And I think combining LSEG's powerful data sets with Databricks' scalable data and AI platform, that unlocks so many use cases, from personalization, investment analytics, risk management, to really take financial services to a data and AI-driven age.
So actually, this is a really cool one. So I've been really impressed with the Databricks One extension to the platform, where it takes the idea of workflows from the kind of domain of a developer into actually everybody. And I think to really extend the meaning of why workflows become so important, whether we're talking about agents, actually more generally, actually just the step change of anyone in their language being able to ideate with a tool that is just natural language is a totally revolutionary step. Couple that with a genuinely scalable platform and trusted data, you're really seeing something that we've never seen before in financial services. And I like to joke about how many ideas in financial services are really lost because people never had the right tools to be able to express them. And I wonder how this conversation will unfold in just a year's time when we see that wave of innovation that is coming from financial services simply from having the right tools.
AI has tremendous potential in financial services, and if you look at the efficiency ratios of banks as an example, people are hovering around 50 or 60%. That just means for every dollar they spend, they can generate roughly $1 of revenue. That's what 50% efficiency ratio is. What I get really excited about AI native workflows is there's no rules that say banks can't be more profitable. Like, why can't an efficiency ratio be 30%? Why can't it be 10%? Why can't a bank have big tech-like profits? And I think AI native workflows really enable those kind of use cases that come to fruition. That hasn't been the case over the past 10 to 20 years.
There's been some really important step changes that have happened in the industry, and I think we've been really aware of, or at least we've started to become aware in terms of there's this view and belief, I think, and conviction that AI is a really important thing for financial services. And there was a lot of experimentation in the early days, and actually a lot of variation in terms of how people thought about a really trusted, scalable implementation. I think there has been actually a real convergence about what that looks like more recently. And then there's been some really important changes, like the comfort around, or growing comfort around, things like MCP, or Model Context Protocol, in a way that allows people to really safeguard the quality of data, but allow for it to actually be used at scale. And that is a really important change, that it really underpins this kind of idea of ideation, agentic workflows, and actually allowing for us to use data in a way that we've never seen before. For many of the customers I've worked with before, every idea started with creation of some kind of a backlog into an engineering team to say, I want to be able to try and experiment with this idea. But when experimentation becomes actually cheap and you just needed natural language to express it, then we can really run through those creation cycles much faster. So this kind of combination of we've been playing, we've been experimenting, we now know what works for us in terms of our own respective organizations, what actually scales. So we're going from that kind of experimentation into something scalable. And then the level of investment and focus in AI has actually allowed us to have these step changes that have unblocked that union between scalable platforms and trusted data. that's why this is such an important moment. And I see it as a bit of a release valve where we have such a tremendous over 33 petabytes of trusted data waiting for our customers, and now it is unleashed.
So when you bring in trusted data from LSEG into a platform like Databricks, you could truly lower the cost of curiosity. And if you look at the innovation in financial services over the past few decades, I would argue there hasn't actually been that much innovation. So if you imagine how you shop or how you watch a movie, versus 10 or 15 years ago versus how you invest or how you get a loan, things haven't actually largely changed that much. And I think we're at an inflection point because data and AI now is democratized across an organization. And with trusted high quality data from LSEG, with a platform like Databricks, you could truly unlock new types of use cases and drive innovation that hasn't happened before.
I think it's really interesting actually when you think about, and I don't think we've actually seen this trend before, but where you get to actually ideate and play with something in a personal and level before you start to think about what role it might play for your organization. And usually it's the other way around, where we're kind of introduced in a very kind of frankly stoic way to kind of new technologies, and they're kind of rolled out and then we kind of lean into them. Now we're actually seeing that in reverse, where you're getting a huge amount of individual playing actually before we start to say, well, this is a phenomenal way for us to solve this problem. And actually one of the things that I'm always thinking about with AI is there's always that opportunity to take a fantastic new technology and apply it to an old problem. And AI encourages no more than ever before to actually reevaluate the problem we were trying to solve in the first place. I describe it like, if you can re-articulate and really articulate what that problem is and what success looks like, you can actually see a totally different way of solving that problem. Now, that isn't a panacea, it doesn't apply to everything, but actually it does allow us that level of transformation into old problems that are just extraordinary today.
So there are millions and millions of people who are either unbanked or underbanked throughout the world. And it could be as simple as moving from one country to another. You have no credit history. You can't even get a credit card. You have a very low limit on a credit card. To me, the responsible use of AI is figuring out how could we make the financial service ecosystem more inclusive. And the way to do that is to have trusted data to make trusted decisions. The other way to think about this is if you have bad data, you make bad decisions with high confidence. With quality data, you make quality decisions on quality data with high confidence. And I think that makes a big difference in how we can make the financial world more inclusive. And that's how I think about the use of ethical data and ethical AI. I truly think the Databricks-LSEG partnership is one of a kind. Everybody at Databricks is really excited about this and ability to deliver zero-copy data to our financial service customers. But I'm more excited about the potential use cases that unlocks for our joint customers across the sell side, buy side, all around the world.
This partnership really for our customers really represents a step change. And no longer do they have to think about how to wrangle together these different products and really get the best out of them to do their jobs. By coming together, we've solved that problem for them that really allows them to do their jobs in the way that they really want to, drive those efficiencies, to differentiate, and really find insights that they've never been able to find before. Yep. Truly exciting.
So one-of-a-kind partnership.
Truly is. So delivering AI-ready data on Databricks actually means a few things, and I'm always going to go back to the problem we're solving for customers, where thinking about the union of often their own personal data as an organization together with trusted market data from the likes of LSEG is a really important problem to solve for a lot of different use cases. Now, what does that look like as a solution? Well, it looks like making sure we've got Delta Share and making sure that it's really accessible to our customers, making sure we've got MCP in place that allows for those connectors for those agentic workflows, making sure that when LSEG is providing that data, of course, it's trusted. And what I mean by trusted, it's got that quality seal on it, and we have really stood behind it, and we can really stand behind how did we determine that number was the right number? How do we make sure that it is well curated historically? How do we make sure that we've got the right semantics with that data? All of those things are so important for our customers in really getting the best out of that data. So let me take this in two parts. There's obviously the technical piece in terms of how we're enabling our data from a Delta Share perspective and with MCP into those agentic framework, but also, and of course with Databricks One. But actually for me, one of the things I really like about Databricks is they actually really understand the customer problem. And it's really easy for Junta and I to have a conversation about risk management or what alpha signals might look like, or there's so many use cases. Now, I think this is what elevates a partnership, is when you can go past here are the kind of nuts and bolts and mechanics, frankly, into this is how you turn all of these tools and capabilities into something that helps that customer solve a problem faster in a really differentiated way. That's when it becomes really special. Yeah, this is actually something that really excites me. When we think about analytics and actually just models, I'll generalize the point into models, we're really thinking about something that becomes truly dynamic. So rather than just bringing in data that really allows us to have confidence in that decision making, now the whole experience becomes actually a really dynamic one. So I can evaluate the impact of a news announcement on the valuation within a portfolio. I can actually ideate and create a deterministic model and use it to create a new type of signal that differentiates me from my peers. So we go into this whole other level now in terms of how we use data, but actually in a way that we can have true differentiation, whether that's in terms of how we manage risk as organizations or build out alpha signals or so many other types of strategies for our organizations. One of the things I really like about it with Databricks is also to think about there are many, many different models. And as organizations, we have, frankly, hundreds of different models. But those models haven't always been put to good use. And they're often left a little bit sidelined. And there's often some fantastic ideation that went into those models, very high-powered models. And actually by putting them on the grid and really unlocking them together with Databricks, what we actually see is not just those great data layers, but actually that huge dynamic transformation layer all coming together as part of that AI and agentic experience. The way to make data less complex is to make it actually intuitive. And I think a lot of complexity in data is actually not because the data was complex, but because the pipelines and the frameworks around the data became so extraordinarily complicated. There's very few instances where I look at a problem and say, did someone describe that problem in a pipeline of data, or did they describe a problem that they wanted to solve because they were trying to better understand a changing market dynamic or better understand a risk or identify a fraudulent activity? They describe problems as they should do. And then as an industry over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we've then encouraged them to translate their problem into a set of very complicated queries that allow them to get at their answer. So how do we make data more usable? We make it intuitive. And that isn't necessarily about changing the data, but it is absolutely about changing the way that we present the data in response to someone's question.
Data is the fuel that powers agentic workflows, AI, multiple different things that our customers are trying to do. LSEG's data set is so powerful for us because if you look at Thomson Reuters new data, Dow Jones news, reference data, tick data, all this stuff, this is really the fuel that fires so many different workflows within financial services. And today, 95% of institutions are not getting that much value out of their data and AI investments. And I think our joint partnership is all about bringing that 95% to 100% of value. And I think that's what our partnership will be able to unlock for our customers. So Delta sharing is a zero copy ability to access LSEG's very valuable data. And with Databricks Unity Catalog, you could get a governed data set, very valuable data set from LSEG that has tight integration to things like MCP to power agentic workflows. So what it really does is unlock a multitude of different types of use cases, whether it be research assistance or investment analytics or risk management type use cases with the trusted data that's tightly integrated into a governance layer that enables agentic workflows to really produce trustable, verifiable type of results that you could trust and use across your organization. So when you combine LSEG's data with proprietary data, it unlocks many types of new use cases that people have been trying to do but unable to do in the past. So I'll give you an example of this, which is risk management. So if you're trying to do market risk, typically banks and hedge funds and asset managers use market data to predict, value at risk calculations or specific market risk calculations. But what if you could take in machine readable news? And combine unstructured data about what companies are doing with market data as new signals for risk. That is a completely novel and new way to start thinking about risk, and that's the power of combining LSEG's data with proprietary data to other types of data that a company has or a bank or hedge fund has to be able to reimagine risk management and ultimately protect the firm from multiple types of losses, potential losses that they haven't been able to do before. I think the next decade is going to be a great decade in terms of innovation in financial services, but I also think it's going to be a great decade to be an employee of a financial service institution. And what I mean by that is, prior to my role here at Databricks, I used to work on the sell side in equity sales and tradings. And throughout my 15-year career in that space, I saw redundancies and juniorization and automation. And today, largely speaking, many of the largest institutions on Wall Street are running fairly lean with a fairly juniorized workforce. So if you could augment that with AI-driven workflows, quality data insights powered by trusted data sets from LSEG, you could actually start getting more out of your people in ways that you couldn't do before. And that's what's really informed me and got me really excited about the value proposition of AI for people who are working in financial services. I think not many kids these days grow up wanting to be a banker. And I think hopefully over the next 5 years, that's going to change dramatically because it's going to be really rewarding work, enriching work, and exciting work, and be able to dissect financial markets in ways that they couldn't do before.